Hello, and welcome to another episode of EQ Cast. I'm your host, Christy Pritchard. Thanks so much for joining us on this unconventional sideshow of healing and self-betterment. This is where you can find unscripted conversations with authentic humans sharing their trials and triumphs around their emotional wellness journey. We keep it light, but we can get dark, so fasten your seatbelts. Welcome back to the show. I had a couple weeks off there, but today I've got my lovely guest, Jahneice Wright. She's another podcaster, a fellow podcaster, and she's got the JAH Cast, Just an Honest podcast. She started late in December of 2020. We connected on Instagram, actually, and we're here today to talk about the effects that the pandemic has had on us emotionally and psychologically and all that fun jazz. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Christy. I was looking through our messages, and I remember you saying initially that you connected with me because you felt we both had, the same kind of vibe, same kind of sass, and I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, we super did. I could tell right away. I was like, yeah, that's my steez right there. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Super stoked. And this is kind of a trigger topic for a lot of people because we're still in it. Like we're in the thick of it right now. Like this is no joke. And it's actually kind of building. I've noticed online, haven't you?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because I think I forget to remember that for some people, this is a very difficult thing to talk about on the daily or casually. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And just so everyone knows too, we are not going to be talking about this like in a political way. We're both staying very apolitical and just sharing our personal little path through this and like what it's looked like. I don't even know what it's looked like for you because we haven't talked about it yet. So I'm really stoked to understand how you've been vibing over there on the East Coast. I don't know. Is it high animosity over there or?
I don't know if I necessarily feel the animosity. I know lately, there's been a lot more protesting happening. So that's where it's impacting just people trying to get to work. And that's where I've noticed it more in the downtown area. Yeah. But I think amongst my friends and family, we've been actually navigating it pretty well in terms of respecting that, everyone can make their choice. Yeah. And respecting that everybody doesn't even care to debate it and discuss it.
Awesome. Wow. You guys are super lucky. That's probably the first family that I know that said that actually. Everyone I've talked to mostly, not too in depth, but there's been a lot of segregation even within families and close friend groups. I'm really lucky too. Like my family hasn't really asked too much and we kind of let each other do our own thing. So there hasn't been any debate or topic. I mean, I almost got into it today with a family member and then we both were like, oh, we're just misunderstanding each other. Cool. You do you. I'm going to do me. And let's just give each other space and respect each other while we navigate this crazy ass world.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if anything, I've actually bonded with one of my cousins. I was kind of telling you earlier, and that's been really nice. And so we've kind of come together to support each other. And that's, and it's not taking sides. It's just, I'm here for you, brother. If you need to vent and if you're sad, let's just chat it out and just know, But you said people are having a hard time getting to work. So are there protests like every day out there?
From what I've heard, because I don't live in the downtown area, but from what I heard, there has been an increase in the protests around the hospital specifically. Right. So,
I think that's just a little, it's a little much. Like protest anywhere else. People got to get their health checked and, rush in there. Okay. That's sad.
I know.
I'm trying to stay political, but
I get exactly. It's so hard. I just will say I respect people that are working during the pandemic. Yeah. And I think that in the healthcare industry, they're just maybe dealing with it more in their face than anybody else. So I have a respect for that and how heavy it is. Yeah. And I think that's too bad that they have to deal with the protests on top of it.
100%. And I wonder if it's hospital workers protesting, because I know the one that was here on the island, I had to drive around to find it. I was trying to support my friends that are in healthcare, but in Vancouver. And I went to City Hall first because I just assumed that that's where it would be. Like, to me, that seems like a logical place to have a protest. And they weren't there. And I reluctantly went by the hospital, and sure enough, yes, they were there, but I get it. Most of them were hospital workers, and it was tiny. Like you could drive along the street, no problem. No one was in anybody's way, and no one was screaming, and it was just like a few people with signs. But if it's clogging stuff up, that is like, it is just impeding on civil protests. Like, yeah, let's just do it in a place that's not going to endanger anybody else's. But I definitely see how and why. Like, they deserve to have their voice, everyone
I agree.
does.
I support protesting. I support freedom of voice and choice and all of that. And I think there's been a lot of healthcare workers that protest it, as well as, people that don't work in the industry. So I think it opened my mind that there's not clear groups here.
Yeah.
Like there is some nurses that are pro and some that are anti. There are some politicians that are pro, some that are anti. So I think I just always try to remember that we're all humans, and that is why everyone has a different opinion. And that's it's different reasons. It's personal reasons. It's educational. Like there's so many
our own
things.
Experience too. It's our personal experience with and with our loved ones. Like if somebody has gotten sick, then obviously we're going to be more biased to want to get the vaccine. If somebody we know who's been injured from the vaccine, we're going to want to, maybe be a little hesitant to take it. So it goes in all these different ways and being pulled in all these different directions. And it's really challenging to navigate.
I didn't expect for the ball to drop to be, us being forced to slow down, and in some ways to go back to the basics, I think I tried to find the benefits of everything that was going on and dealing with the obvious like isolation and depression that comes with it, but trying to use that to find out what I like, what helps me to feel rejuvenated and all of that. So I did try to be positive.
Yeah. And you started the podcast during the thick of that too. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did as well. And so you ended up connecting with like-minded people or your friends initially?
Initially, I started out with my friends, and what the whole angle was that I had never really asked my friends such personal questions, and vice versa. Yeah. So although I had known them for years, I tried my best to ask questions that allowed me to get to know them better. Amazing. And so that was amazing. But lately I've been really enjoying connecting with like new people, and especially fellow podcasters.
Heck yes. We have the exact same timeline, it seems like, because I think I started in March, I believe. But yeah, and I started with friends as well. And as much as I'm still going to integrate them throughout this process, but it's been really fun to just connect with other people on Instagram. And that's where I found a lot of people and friends of friends and stuff who've just reached out and who are in the podcasting world too, and are just really interested in having these conversations and divulging and getting into it, and sharing their story and also being vulnerable and stuff. It's been a pretty eye-opening experience to connect with so many different people. I quite love it. Your personal months alone, like were you guys, I don't know what the deal was in Toronto or that area, were you guys allowed to do anything? Was it like Australia style lockdown or?
It wasn't that serious. It was more like encouraging people to stay home, and also a lot of places, things that we would do for fun were closed. So we couldn't really eat out in the winter. We couldn't go to the malls, the movies. So in terms of going outside in the winter, it lessened our activities. And then most people ended up, staying home majority of the time. And I think for most of us, the big issue was transitioning to work from home. I don't know if I'll say it's an issue, but you're going from being outside of the home at least 40 hours a week to now being stuck inside. So that
literally 24 hours a day, pretty much, unless you're shopping for groceries. Yeah.
Like that was a hard experience for I would think a lot of people. So that's what got me for sure.
And are you working from home still?
I'm still working from home, but what I did was I started waitressing, because that was a big thing. Waitressing's always been my part-time job, and I wasn't able to do it for about a year because of COVID. Yeah. I didn't think it was like worth it, because there were so many closing downs and openings and not a lot of business. But this summer was really good. I was able to get out there, and I didn't realize like how much I needed that and how helpful it was
just
for me.
Being social and other humans.
It was so good. That was just happening like once or twice a week, but it was important.
Cool. I'm glad you got to get out and do that, because I wasn't sure if things were going to open up by the middle of the winter. It was looking a little grim, but I'm glad everything came back around. I snowboard myself, so I spent a lot of time on the ski hill, and I'm really fortunate that about 20 minutes from my house, there is a really nice ski hill. So the winter was fine for me, and I love the winter.
Good for you.
But yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like this season. We're not sure what's opening and what's not. So I might experience some, and also at the same time though, to take that opportunity, if there isn't time for extracurricular activities, to really focus in on what it is that we're here for, and for work, and for more purposeful stuff. Like podcasting to me seems pretty purposeful, actually. Sharing information is extremely purposeful, and a way to give back, to people who might be stuck at home and not having a lot of conversations and want to learn something new. So maybe focusing in on that instead of doing all my fun things, but we'll see what the winter brings. I know a lot of places in the world right now are going through other lockdowns and other things. So it's pretty, I try not to watch the news. Do you watch mainstream media?
I try not to. It really affects me, and I have to just be honest about that. And that's what it is. Even sometimes on social media, like if I'm scrolling too much and I see too much, I think everyone has a right to share.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning that like I have a right to view, and sometimes it's way too much for me. So yeah, it's a balance, because I also, like, the pandemic really showed me that I was kind of like, burying my head, avoiding big issues. And so I want to be aware, but I also want to be like aware of my feelings and my emotions in that.
100%. And that's where you're aware of what's happening and how it's translating internally for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never really paid too much attention to that. Like obviously things come up and things go through us, but it's actually been interesting to stand outside of myself to observe what's going on, and observational rather than just feeling it and just doing it. It's like, oh, how or why is this affecting me so much, and what can I do about it to ground myself? What can I do about it to let it affect me less and just be a little bit more present and understanding and compassionate instead of
Yeah.
triggered and flying off the freaking handle.
I think that it's kind of funny and unfortunate, because I had nothing to do over the winter and I was able to really look into myself and use that time wisely, which was awesome. And now I'm very busy and I don't have that time to put into the podcast, to put into myself, balancing two jobs. So it's like some days I'm like, oh, I miss the lockdown. And like, I hate to say that, but
yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
I had such peace. Like I had time
Yeah.
to craft and to bake and to
Yeah.
journal. And I
Yeah.
actually loved that I had that perfect balance. And it's all about trying to find that amongst the fun too, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now with everything coming back into play and knowing what it was like to be in that space of time for ourselves, like really self-care, self-love time, that was, as well, a lot of people anyways. I don't know, I turned into a COVID-aholic for a little bit, but but there was some self-care moments, and it's finding that balance between the two. When people got let back out, it was just kind of like, we're free, and just went a bit berserk. And then now it's finding, okay, so I can have that freedom element and I can have that self-care element, and how do I marry the two to create more of a balance and integrate more of that self-care, self-love back into my life, which is really important. So now you don't really have you not been journaling or anything? It's hard to make the time.
It's definitely hard to make the time. And what I think it is, like, to be honest, like I haven't had the time to work through my emotions to feel comfortable to journal them. And I've just accepted that. And I don't think that I even knew that that was a part of my process, because when I was at home, I had time to do everything, you know what I mean? But now I just feel like I've been on the go. I'm working almost every day. Totally. I'm a little bit on autopilot and I'm not probably being very present.
I see. For me, journaling, I don't even know. Sometimes I'll open it up and I'll just start writing and I'll have no idea how I'm feeling at the time. And I started doing that when I moved back to the island this summer. And I would every morning get up with my coffee and just I started with my dreams and writing what I could remember about my dreams. And then from there, I would just kind of write about, and then my feelings would come out as I was writing about them. I'd be like, oh, I guess it kind of brought me to that present moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of already knowing what I'm going to write or thinking about it, I just kind of put the pen to the paper and
And one thing that I had read about your past is that, your mom was a therapist. And I wanted to ask about that, because for me, I grew up in a home where we didn't really talk about therapy. We didn't talk about anxiety, depression. So I think it was really in the pandemic that I accepted that I do suffer from anxiety and depression. Like it just became a part of my vocabulary recently.
Yeah, same here, actually. I've always kind of professed myself to be a very free-loving, free-spirited, like happily, and my friends still think I'm really free-spirited. I get, because I move around a fair bit, I always have. But yes, my mom was a therapist, but she also was very unhealthy emotionally herself. And no matter how many skills that she had to have conversations about things, which she would try and put on me, but as a young, angsty teenager, I was having absolutely none of it. So I actually didn't reap any benefits. I saw her dark side more than I did see what she helped for other people. And I know she helped a lot of other people, and she was able to converse with them well and get their emotions out. But with me, since it was my mom, it was such a close relationship in a different dynamic that it was almost too much. I didn't want to open up to her on purpose, if that makes sense. I didn't really come to realize that till later on. What did your parents do? Or what do your parents do?
Well, I mean, like my mom's always worked in fundraising, and she's always been like working for different charities. So I've always seen how she's doing like meaningful work, and I've always like wanted to like model that and follow after her.
Beautiful.
You know, my dad's been a hard worker as well. He does like, he works with his hands, construction, painting, stuff like that. So I've grown up in a hardworking home and I appreciate that. I just don't think that we grew up in a home where we discussed feelings. Where we discussed politics, where we discussed racism, where we discussed the heavy stuff, which I said it in a previous podcast of mine. I can respect how I grew up, and it made me
sorry.
It's okay. It made me not have a chip on my shoulder, you know, as a result. But now I need to start doing the work, and I need to start digging into that stuff because it's all very important.
Yeah, it is super important, especially, you know, okay, can you hear her? You can't? Okay, that's enough. Covering your eyes so you can't see anything. There you go. Good girl. See, I don't know why. It's just her eyes. Eyes or ears. If I cover her eyes, it's fine. If I cover, let's try her
freshen
ears
her
now.
up.
There we go. And if she can't hear anything or see anything, you're okay. Sorry about that, everyone. But yeah, having those conversations is super important, and not something I think many families did in our generation. I think we're similar in age. You're probably younger than I am, but I know that it's not common. It wasn't common in any families that I knew growing up. So now that's changing, though. Thank goodness. Like, these conversations are being had, and I think especially with everyone having internal time and really sitting with all of that and having nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, you're confronted with a lot. There were a lot of breakdowns of relationships. There was a lot of chaos, and a lot of that was to do with everyone was facing some things that they didn't realize that they needed to face, and everything kind of came out in the wash, you know. Now
I appreciate the time for that, you know. I appreciate that everyone could like look into themselves. And now my hope is that when we become busy again and we're having fun and we're trying to get back to regular, we remember like all that we've learned, you know.
Exactly. And I don't think there's any way to not. And I also think it created a permanent ripple effect, if you will, like, or a shift, because not only spiritually are we evolving as human beings, and I see it in my conversations every day I have with people, and that's changing. There is no doubt about it. What I'm witnessing, like even online, on social media, conversations I'm having, interacting with strangers, these conversations weren't being had 5 years ago. So, you know, moving into the age of Aquarius, this might be too hippy dippy and spiritual for some of you guys out there. But the age of Pisces was more about construction and building. And I can't remember how many thousands of years we were in that for. And that was very apparent. What did we do? We constructed a world, and we constructed economies and cities. And now we're moving into more spirituality and away from that. And that's the whole point of age of Aquarius, which we came into, I think, in March or something. And it's so obvious to me now. Like, and it's funny, without knowing that, I've noticed the shift. And then I've been reading about this recently. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. Heck yes. Go humanity, I hope. You know? Yeah,
because I do think that previous to COVID, and I'm going to speak from my own experience, but I think people can relate. Like I said, I get guilty of being on autopilot, not being present, and not being my genuine self. Yeah. And I think you have to be your genuine self to actually achieve what you're meant to achieve in this life. So if you're never going to come over that hurdle, if you're not, you don't have to be spiritual or religious, but you need to be honest with yourself and honest in your interactions, because it pays off. Like, the podcast has attracted me to so many people because I'm being more genuine in the podcast. Like, I've connected with people like you, and I feel like I'm not bothering the people that I'm speaking to, because we really are passionate about these conversations, and it feels good.
It's the opposite of bothering. It's elevation. It's
it feels good.
Where it should be. Yeah. Good to hear. And that's another thing that's going to start elevating consciousness too, as a collective, because these conversations, they have ripple effects. They have, you know, energy does have an effect on us. And these conversations always leave me feeling riveted and excited and much better about the state of the world, even though it seems to be in a little bit of peril at the moment. But and that whole high vibe shit, it's for real. You know, and I can tell after I leave a conversation, if you leave like a very upsetting conversation, it feels heavy and it's in your body and you feel sad. But if you leave the same goes for the opposite, the other side of the pendulum. If you leave a beautiful conversation, you leave feeling uplifted and super excited and optimistic. So, and more of those conversations, even through this, that I'm having with people that I'm connecting with through the devastation of what's happening, it's pulling us to have these high vibe conversations, because we have to look at the dark side. You know what I mean? We're looking at the craziness that's happening and being like, oh my God, is anyone else seeing how crazy that is? And It seems like
And
a
I think,
sickness almost.
yeah, and I
There.
think in life, like anything, there's just always that duality. So, you can feel heavy for so long, but there's going to be that day where you're going to want to consider that other side. Like
Yeah.
it's going to come, and you're going to
Yeah.
want to consider the positives or how you can find a positive. And that's what it is. I love that people are having this conversation. It's becoming a part of like my workplace conversation, which is like
Awesome.
awesome that they're respectful of that. And yeah, I want to circle back a little bit to the differences that are being had over opinions, because I
Yeah.
think that if we just point out that we're respecting that it's not great what's happening, nobody is
Yeah.
happy about what's
Yeah.
happening, nobody loves to be forced, but you choose what you want to choose.
Yeah.
And we can somehow, we have to get through this together. So
Yeah.
just remembering that we're all human.
We're all human, and like we said earlier, we have our own experiences that have brought us to these conclusions that are creating our realities. And without that respect, that your reality is your reality, my reality is my reality, we're not going to make it out of here alive. Like there will be all-out war, side against side, and we don't need that. What we need is understanding that this is a very stressful situation. This is very heavy and for all people, but it's also light, just like the pendulum, just like how it is with good days and bad days. There also is a lot of light coming from this too, because a lot of people are fed up with how things are going, and people are starting to see some not so okay things happening in the world, and starting to stand for it. So there are good things happening within the negative, but it's just like this. I used this analogy the other day. I don't know if it was on the podcast or just in a conversation, so excuse me if I'm repeating myself, but it's like we're in the metamorphosis stage of the butterfly, and it's like the caterpillar, sure, we're like moseying along for a little bit, but now we're like in a squeeze, and it's uncomfortable, and you can't tear that shit open too soon, or else you're not going to fly, and you need that time, and we're still in it, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get out of it. And I'm okay with being patient and just kind of waiting it out and taking the lessons while they're here. But eventually it is going to come to, it's going to change like everything does.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
it's knowing that. But yeah, and how to navigate uncomfortable conversations, like with people with your work, is there, everyone's pretty understanding there too with that?
I think that my work does a good job of, there's always going to be those people that make their comment or their question that's a very heavy question. We'll just ignore it. And I know that's in some ways inappropriate, but our choice is to not have a conversation about the wrong
Engage.
things.
Yeah.
Let's answer a question that's going to cause some positivity in the group and try to focus on that today. And
Yeah.
I do find that because the workplace has been very, everyone's right to do whatever is right for you, every employee is trying to keep their actual opinions private.
That's good. That's a good way to do it.
I've even noticed that, like, as a waitress, which surprises me. And I'm happy about that. Like, it's not a topic of conversation, and it's not something that tables are talking about really. And I'm approaching and becoming a part of, because I think people do recognize this is private and needs to be done in private spaces and in the right situations too.
Yeah, and it should be, but I feel like it's being made public by by being forced out of certain places, and which is super challenging for whoever's on that side. It's just, when you get certain freedoms taken away, it does make you feel constricted and confined. And how long is this going to go on for? And what are the repercussions down the line? Like, is it going to get worse, or more freedoms going to be taken away? Is the next 2 shot going to be 4, like Israel? Like, how many more is there going to be? Like, what is this going to mean going down the line? When I was not joking, I actually made a point. I stopped talking about it online now because it's such a rabbit hole. Anyways, I stopped talking about it online, but I'll say it here. I just made a point, like, after the first shot, I was like, then there's going to be 2, and then there's going to be 3 or 4. And they're like, no. And then sure enough, there's 3 and 4 in Israel. I'm not against vaccines at all. I get them when I go traveling. I have them a bunch in me. That's not about that. It's about, like, when does it end and how effective are they? And let's have those conversations, and let's see, what the stats are moving forward. Like, let's just see, like, everyone, let's just see. And we're heading down that, we may be heading down that path. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I'm, like I say, I always try to remember I'm a human. So human rights. I hate that people are being told what to do and are losing rights. And I can understand people that think that's, like, I can understand that's not cool. I also understand people that have, like, high paranoia with COVID and how the vaccine gives them peace of mind. So for me, I'm wanting to make space for, if you were super paranoid and now you have the vaccine, so now your anxiety is going way down, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get it because it's giving you anxiety, then you shouldn't get it, because I
Yeah.
don't want you to be losing sleep.
Yeah.
And like, and that's just is what it is. But at the end of the day, I do think that human rights, it's becoming a human rights discussion is what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
for
definitely.
sure, you know, if we're a country and we're united,
Yeah.
then we are creating I don't want to say it because someone said it and I disagreed, but we are creating a segregation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love when people say that, because I don't know if it's as deep and as, you know, long
Accurate.
link,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
as
it's,
the real segregation that we know of. But
yeah.
we are, like you said, people are going to start being left out. So they are going to be separated. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
real.
And there's a chance that we're, you know, going down that path even a little further. I'm just really proud of everyone, pretty much so far, everyone. Oh, that's what I was going to say when you're talking about Facebook too. I learned this little feature called snooze. And you
Ooh.
can see someone's posts that you, if you don't want to see them without unfriending them, because I think that that's a little
Oh,
callous and
yes.
cold, and just I think it's a little much.
Yes.
Like there's no
I
need to
actually do
unfriend
this on
people over this stuff.
Instagram
Yeah.
for
Oh,
with a
you can
lot
do
of
it on
people.
Insta. Oh,
Yes, I
thanks.
do it with a lot of people.
No, awesome. I just found it on Facebook the other day. I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
I found Instagram. My Instagram is still pretty like low key. No one's going too berserk on there.
I've had to
But
unfollow some people, but
yeah,
that's like a new thing that I'm doing. Like, it's not necessarily that I hate you or I'm against you, but I'm thinking of my emotional well-being. So
yeah,
if
and
you
it's a
are putting
boundary.
in, yeah, if you're putting
Yeah.
in bad content that I find is hurting me, I need to remove you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally acceptable and that makes
You
sense
know?
for sure. Yeah, I haven't had to remove anyone yet. I always have such guilt around that, and that's probably just
Yeah.
the people pleaser in me and like the codependent in me. It's like, don't hate me, love me, which I'm also working on. But and it's really hard to remove people, but definitely the snooze thing. Good to know it's like that for Instagram too.
Yeah, you can do
It's
it to
a nice little
stories, you can
feature.
do it to posts,
Yeah.
whatever you
Awesome.
choose.
Yeah, thankfully, yeah, people are still like they're sharing some political stuff, but a lot of my friends feel the same way I do, so I'm not that bothered by
You're
it.
not
But
running into it. Yeah.
yeah, thankfully, because I know on Facebook I am.
And I'm like a believer of post whatever you want on social media. So if it's bothering me, like, I'm just going to log out, or like you said, snooze you, because if it makes you feel better to voice yourself online, like, why would I take that away from someone, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I know, and I don't want to like I'm not there to start an argument either. So it's much
Yeah.
easier if you just take the different higher road and just be like, okay, I'm gonna piece out of this conversation. And it's really hard too because sometimes you see something, you're like, oh, you feel so compelled to like respond because you have a piece of information that might add to that or help. And it's just like really, it's been my challenge in the last couple of weeks to really like dial that back and be like, I don't have to share everything. Sure, I know some things that you may not like,
Yeah.
or, you know, follow someone on Instagram, a physician or a scientist that is very knowledgeable and very credited. You know, I don't have to share all of that stuff. I'll
Yeah.
just follow my people, you follow your people, and
Exactly.
hopefully we'll meet up at the end of all this craziness, you know?
Because what I try to remember, and after years of trying to always explain myself to people, like, sometimes it doesn't work. So it's not even worth it. Like,
Yeah,
you could
totally
have
true.
the best information and they'll be
Yeah.
like, no, it's like still
I don't
no.
care. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard pass on your
Yeah.
solid
And it's a
information. That's
bummer.
been,
So
yeah.
save your energy, save your
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good call. But I know for a lot of my friends, like, the feedback that they say to me when I'm like, stay positive, find things that are healthy to do, you know,
Mhm.
they're like, I struggle to do that, to put that into play. And so I think it would really, really good if I could even break down my mental process of how I like actually practice self-care and why I practice self-care and like all of that, because I can understand if you're starting from square one, how you don't know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't. This is a kind of a new
Yeah.
realm for many. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast are already on that path, but you know, as far as the general populace is concerned, I think that it's not a very widely embraced concept yet of self-care, self-love. I'm sure they hear it all the time, but maybe on our next podcast we can bring that kind of stuff up, really take note of what we're doing daily, even our internal conversations and what we're saying to
I
ourselves,
absolutely agree.
which is so huge. And I catch myself now with some negative self-talk about not only myself but now other people too. And I was just like, what am I've never been that way about others. Usually it's just like, but because of all this animosity
Mm-hmm.
and all this information sharing, it's starting to leak out, and I really have to hold myself accountable, and I really have to dial it back. And it starts with the thoughts, you know, and those toxic thoughts, and just dial them back and just yeah.
Yeah. I feel
being
like
present.
I get a lot of energy from people, and they also like my circle, they help with my confidence. And so when I was stuck in my house, like I was feeling low confidence, and I was feeling like, how do it's
God, she's
okay.
loud.
Like, how do I make myself feel confident, like without external compliments and stuff like that? How do I
Yeah.
just wake up and be a confident person? So that was also like a huge thing during COVID. So
Yeah.
I would love for us to like dive deep into that, like really
Heck
get
yes.
into it, and
Yeah.
people can hopefully like use those examples and incorporate them as a starting point at least.
Yeah, definitely. I even need some of that confidence stuff because I love my last podcast I had with Nate.
Yeah.
We talked about why am I blanking on it right now? Oh my God. About imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And yeah, and so that comes in line with confidence.
Yes.
It's the lack of self-belief and confidence that we have that kind of keeps us held in this state of perpetual, I don't know, for me it's a lot of procrastination, and
Oh,
it comes
wow.
out, yeah, it comes out in different ways, and just like in side splitting. Like I have a really hard time keeping things in like in
I'm more
one.
like, I'll just disassociate, you know?
Yeah.
Like if
Oh
I
yeah.
think if
Okay.
something's not going to be good, if I think I'm not going to like something or someone's not going to like me, then I'm like, whatever, I didn't even want to do that. And like,
Right.
just, it will make me more of a loner. And
Yeah.
so it's so funny. I have this podcast that I follow, and they're all about imposter syndrome. Like
Oh, which one's
that,
that?
I will have to pull up the full name. Like it's imposter syndrome something, but
Yeah.
they break down imposter syndrome
Oh.
episode by episode. And for weeks, I was like, this literally doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
And one
But you
day I
kept
was
listening.
just,
I like how you
yeah.
kept at it anyway. Yeah.
And I was venting to my sister one day. I guess I was like, I think I wanted to post on Instagram. And I was like, it's not even that good of a picture, like that kind of conversation. And she's like, you're having imposter syndrome right now. Like it's, you're
So it's a
just
regular
way
conversation. Yeah, people are getting
overthinking.
it. Yeah, yeah.
So it was,
Like,
it came full circle in that moment,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. You're like, oh, okay, there it is. Yeah,
Okay, it applies to me too. Like I should
yeah.
be listening more thoroughly. So
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. I was on a codependent seminar thing or Zoom the other day, yesterday, I think. Yeah, it was yesterday. And we were like, I just kind of stayed silent. It was my first time participating in it. And so I just sat there and listened to everyone. And the woman who was leading it, she just had a lot of information about it. And I read Mary, was it Mary Beatty? I'm probably botching that. It's something Melody Beattie's
okay.
Codependence No More a long time ago. It took me about halfway through the book and I was like, okay, I'm like, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me. And then I just gotten out of a relationship with someone who drank a lot, and that's kind of where
Oh,
codependence stemmed from, was Alcoholics Anonymous and
yeah.
Al-Anon. That's where the whole term kind of came from. And so as soon as it started to get to that stuff, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, there I am. And sometimes we don't want to admit that. So even
Yeah.
though we might have had there was some information in the other stuff, but we're just like not ready and willing yet to really take that in. Just takes
Yeah.
that extra little time. You're like, fuck no, that ain't
Oh,
me. And then
yeah.
you're like, wait a minute.
I even codependency, like I think I have a very beautiful relationship with my mom, but I think in the last year I recognized the codependency of it, and that like, unconditional love, which in some ways makes you not be your best self, right? When somebody loves you unconditionally.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's a whole other topic of conversation because unconditional love can be taken as two different ways, I think. And my understanding of unconditional love is when you allow that person to be who they are without them having to change. You just you accept them for who they are. And I had to come into it, didn't have to, but I started to come into a space of unconditional love because I started appreciating myself more. And then I was like, I deserve to have that.
Yeah.
And so I started loving myself unconditionally, and then it was easier for me to love another unconditionally. And it's like, you can still be you with all your damn quirks and all your stuff. I will still promote you and be your biggest cheerleader to
Yeah.
make sure that you're your best self. But at the same time, I'm not going to judge you for being who it is you are at this moment? And that to me is
Exactly.
unconditional love. And I think that's a very
Yeah.
healthy way to do it. But then there's like maybe a codependent unconditional love. Maybe there's two variations here. I'm just spitballing, but it kind of sounds
No,
like
and
that.
like unconditional love is beautiful, right? Some people don't get to have that. And I'm not even saying anything negative, but I'm saying that I've gotten to this comfort with my mom where she probably doesn't call me out on things necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's always healthy to be called out on things and
Yeah,
to
that's a lack
grow.
of boundaries though.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say that that's
Okay.
unconditional love, maybe a lack of boundaries. Because like if you're gonna call someone out if someone's doing something that makes you uncomfortable, be like,
Yeah.
hey, no, 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 back it
That's
up.
fair.
Like, yeah. And
That's a
then but
good
still
point.
love them
Yeah.
unconditionally. Be like, it doesn't mean I love you any less. Like obviously I still hold that for you, but it's just like, don't fucking do that again.
Yeah,
In the nicest
absolutely.
way
No,
possible.
that's a good way of putting it. It's so funny, like I love bouncing ideas off people.
Ditto.
So
How I
that
get
to
my new
me,
ideas is having these
yes.
conversations.
For me, it clears my mind. Like I have
Awesome.
17 things going on, but you will help me to zero in. Like, so
Awesome.
that's what I love.
Nice. This is the only thing I've really zeroed in on in a really long time. And having these
Aw.
conversations too, actually, while talking, a lot of this stuff just kind of pops. I don't know, does it for
Yeah.
you as well?
Oh,
Yeah, it
for
just
sure.
opens up all these little
Yes.
passageways in my brain that connect all these little synapses, and it's like, oh, hot damn.
Yeah.
There's that. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
pretty exciting. Definitely. Yeah, I've been taking some time off into myself. Speaking of self-care, I took like 3 weeks off, which I definitely needed. I think it was just the announcements and the heaviness and just like summer going and just the chaos online was picking up, and I'm very sensitive. I don't like the word empathetic, but it's something I've learned recently. And when I used to hear that, I'd be like, that just sounds ridiculous. I think it's
Yep.
the attachment people put on being an empath or something. Like it
Yes.
seemed like it was some privilege. I'm like, it's a pain in the ass. Like I don't like feeling other people's feelings. I don't like crying at everything. No, it
Yeah.
sucks.
No, I can
But
relate.
yeah, are you empathetic as well?
Yeah, and I hate to say it. Like
Yeah.
I hate to advertise myself as an empath
Yeah.
because I don't think I'm like the best empath,
Yeah.
but I pick up energy so much. And if you have bad energy and I'm around you, I magnetize and I
Oh
have bad
God, yeah.
energy. And so I have to check myself. And that's where the empathic part of me is me like really micromanaging who I'm around.
Yeah, yeah, there's that too for sure. I'd sometimes I if I don't have a choice or I can't pull myself out of the situation, I'll internalize it as well. So like I'll pick up on the negative energy and I'll think it's about me because apparently
Yeah.
everything's about me. It's just like and that's
Well,
not it.
that's
It's not a
you.
selfish thing. It's an insecurity thing. And it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh crap, I'm like this is making me feel this way and is it my fault? Have I said or done something?" Which is a whole other can of worms, but
It's
one
normal
definitely I've
though.
been looking into. Is it?
Well,
Okay,
my
that's
my
good. It's
new
not something I
thing
talk to
is
a lot of
like
people
if
about.
I am like spiraling, like if I can't get it out of my head, I think I've done something wrong. I think someone's talking about me. I've decided to just send a nice text message now. I'm gonna send a message and say, "Hey, checking in. Just want to make sure like everything's cool between us."
Yeah,
That's my new thing.
I've done that a couple times. As soon as I hear the dogs upstairs, I can tell Peanut's
Yeah,
gonna bark.
he's gonna bark soon.
Yeah, that's a definitely good thing to do, and I think I've done that once or twice, or even just be like, hey, like, how are you doing? Just like a quick
Yeah,
check in. So yeah, definitely a good thing to do, and then that way you can start the dialogue and the communication, and oh, Peanut.
that's
The
okay.
communication, and I'm just trying to rub her head so she just calms
Yeah.
down.
And this is
Um,
definitely something we can like expand on in our part two because these
yeah.
are good examples, but that's just something that resonated with me for sure.
Definitely. 100%. I say that an awful lot. When Nate and I were podcasting, I was like, I'm not going to edit this at all. And I've been trying to do that less and less. And in fact, I barely did any on his. But it's still, do you have any of those tick words that you say a lot?
And in general, if I keep editing, I just keep cutting and cutting and cutting. So
Yeah.
my thing is to edit just like one or two times
Yeah.
and post it and leave it as is and just
Yeah.
like walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. I have like a couple of tick words I've noticed 100% is one, but that just shows I'm really enthusiastic, right?
Yes, this is not absolutely. I know I say absolutely.
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 I say that a lot in text messages
Absolutely.
lately and
Yeah.
messages. I'm noticing absolutely is my response to a lot of things. I don't think I've never caught myself saying it on a podcast though, but it'll probably morph from like texting and messaging to the podcast or to
Yeah.
my daily conversation though. It's a good one. At least it's positive. At least it's not like shit or like
Well,
what people say that
100%
all I
is good.
do.
And like, again, that's you. Like, that's
Yeah.
your, like, my friends are always like, Jahneice, you always say those words. So who cares if you're repeating them? Like, it's genuine to you. And I'm like, you're right. You're right.
You're right. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it. Yeah, I started
Yeah.
when I first started editing. I think we had some cocktails on our conversation, and my girlfriend the next day, I think I told you this earlier, she wanted to cut a bunch of stuff out, and so it took me about 40 hours. And now with my last podcast, I think I've had 16 now, so going from a 40-hour edit to I think it took me half an hour last time. And I just like it was I cut out
Yeah.
a couple really long pauses. when we actually haven't even had any yet. So good for us. But like, when
Yes.
you're really kind of in that deep thought moment. Um, and so I cut out those and then just put on my intro and stuff, and away I went. And it was just
Yeah,
like that's showing confidence too, to bring it back to
exactly.
confidence a little bit, and just a little less fucks to give. And just, this is more who I am and who I'm talking to. And we don't need to edit. Like
Yeah.
I have a disclaimer. Usually I didn't send it to you because you podcast,
Yeah.
what's happening. But some of my friends, I'm like, just so you know, what you
Yeah.
say is going to be for public consumption. So be sure you're comfortable with that.
Well, I tried my best. It was like my intro practice to YouTube, and I had my friends over and we were doing a drinking game, and it was most likely to, and we decided to record it. And honestly, I just couldn't. Like
You couldn't bring yourself to do
it didn't seem genuine to like the message of the podcast.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah.
it
That's
wasn't
another
the
thing
best side
too.
of me.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I kind of like, I was like to my friends, no more excessive
Correct.
cocktails via podcasting. I know my brother and I tried to do one too, and it just turned into a bit of a hot mess. That one didn't
Yeah.
make it to air, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll have that for my own personal. That was our own videotaped conversation.
Exactly. That to me,
Don't all
like
need
my
to
new
make
thing
it.
is like just to try something. And if it was a fail, then it was a fail, and let's not
Yeah.
talk about it anymore. But at least I know that that's not for me,
Duly noted. Yeah,
you
that's
know?
another thing I say a lot. Duly noted.
Oh, I
That's
like
a
that
good one
though.
to do,
I
right?
like that
It is.
one. I like
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I like it too. Put that in my little piggy bank of words.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward, I guess, how are you gonna navigate if things shut down, just to go back to the pandemic and everything? Because you're serving right now and then you have another job, and so you're really ultra busy, but your other
It's
job's fine because it's from home. And
it's
then,
going to be sad to
yeah,
lose the serving, because the reality of it is the social and the money, right? So
yeah,
both are sad. It's going to be
yeah,
sad.
yeah. Do you
Um,
think it'll happen though? Is that where you guys are heading right now?
I personally do not think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
They said roughly around September 20th, I believe, is when we will know for sure or not.
Oh, yeah.
I personally believe it's not happening.
Interesting. And well, that's right when our election is as well. So I think it'll really depend on that
Yeah.
too.
Maybe that's why they said that.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Just like kind of everyone's kind of bracing right now. It's a very pivotal time in Canadian history, and it
I think
is
it's
very
interesting.
scary. It's super
My
interesting. Oh, don't get me wrong.
friends,
I am
her
fascinated.
workplace, they
Yeah.
put her in charge of an event planning, and they said, yeah, just make sure you do it before September 20th because we're expecting a lockdown. So make sure you get that event in. And I was just laughing because they're like basically saying, I don't care. Let's get everyone together before we can't,
Yeah. Good for them. I mean,
I know.
I don't know how good that is for public health.
I know.
Who knows what the numbers are? I don't even know anymore. I don't even know who to believe anymore. I definitely don't watch mainstream media, to bring it back to that too. That is like, oh God, no. It is such a toxic environment. I studied media in university and economics. So I kind of got the lowdown of that back then.
And the distrust that the natural distrust that you should have,
Yeah, healthy distrust. Know, when everyone's owned by each other and they're all
the propaganda, the view, the angle. You got to know that's real, and then it is what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a circle. I'll say it's a circle of massaging. There's a more phallic way to say it, but that is like but I'm sure we all picked up on that. But it is. It's just like, and everyone kind of is in this same elite crowd, and it's really hard to, and I know because like, my family, my grandfather was a politician, he was a senator, and my other grandfather, who I didn't get to meet, he owned Lawson and Lindell Law Firm when he was alive. And so they were like the high-end lawyers for international companies. And it's just like, everyone they are all around each other and stuff. And a lot of my grandmother's friends to this day are very powerful people. And I witness it. And it's, that none of them are bad. They're all lovely humans. There's always going to be good and bad within that industry. But I'm just aware of how much handholding there is that goes on within those groups.
Correct.
So it's quite interesting to watch it unfold in a different way. But anyways, no mass media for me. I hope everyone else is listening to this too. There are plenty of good news sources out there that are very unbiased. Where do you get some of your news information from, if you don't mind divulging?
I honestly wouldn't have something that I feel confident, like, to be honest, like
sharing,
like I really try to avoid. And what I do is I go to people that I trust and that I find to be knowledgeable and educational. And I have like good conversations with them. In general, I feel like I'm not good at filtering out sources. So I would prefer to just have like educated, knowledgeable people that I trust. Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart.
To be honest.
That's smart. Yeah, I just find like some doctors and scientists on YouTube that are very unbiased, that are just dry science. It is like dry and boring, and I just nerd right out, and I love it. And they update me all the time, and they break down all these studies that I can't open up JAMA and just be like, oh, I know what all of this means, because it's hardcore nerd talk, and I'm only a softcore nerd. So, and it's really nice to have somebody else break it down for me in layman's terms. And so I follow people like that just to see where we're at, scientifically speaking,
Yeah, totally.
And I know people make fun of everyone. Oh, they're looking for the science. It's like, yeah, well, some of us actually are. We're not just getting information from memes, and
and I think science is always relevant.
Yeah, and it's always changing, and that's the thing. We really have to stay on top of it. And it's been unfortunate that Canada hasn't really done looking at a lot of countries aren't really looking at Israel and being like, holy crap, what's going on here? What can we do better? How can we course correct and make sure we don't make the same mistakes? And unfortunately, and I feel awful for that country, because they're in the thick of it right now, and it's devastating. Yeah. And I hope Canada doesn't get there, and I'm pretty sure we won't. I hope not. We'll be fine.
It's crazy. It's like almost, I don't even know who are the leaders in fighting. Like, it's hard to say.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to take a pause for 1 sec. That was exciting. Sorry about that, everyone.
It's all good.
I'm back. Thanks, Barky Dog. What can you do? Where were we?
Well, just news sources that you trust. I think that's kind of the,
Yeah. And they're hard to find, and we just have to be and I research everyone. So I will get their name and do like a back check and a background check, which is even hard to do because Google is getting really good at discrediting some people that actually have good accreditations. So I know, and I've noticed that, and I'm like, damn. But I'll look one day and it'll say all these things, and then the video will get viral, and then a couple days later, and it'll be a whole different set of things about how it's just so bizarre. They have a team, obviously, a huge team of people.
For sure. But me, I'm so I'm super green to all of what you're saying. And so I think that would even be useful to talk about, reading a source, researching the author. Yeah. So that people feel confident about what they're reading, or think they know it's not real what they're reading,
Yeah, exactly. And another really easy thing that I do now is I will Google whatever news source that it is that I'm getting and see who owns that, and go through Wikipedia. And it's usually a really long line of, it takes a while to get to who's funded that, and are there interests involved. And that's a really imperative part of the research process, is to find out who is running the show here, where is this information stemming from.
And just being, opening your eyes to your that fact,
Yeah. Being very cognizant. And that's what we have to do. The more aware we are, the easier we'll get through this with compassion, love, and awareness. I think we got this thing dialed, but we'll see.
I agree. I know we're doing pretty good, but we can be doing better. And all we can do is just kind of stick together as best we can and be patient, like you said. 100%. And I do think it's all going to work out. I try to be positive, and I'm optimistic.
Of course
I think it's all going to work out. I think we're all going to be okay. And we just have to get through it.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, lives are lost, and that is the effect of a pandemic, and it's super unfortunate on all sides, no matter which way it came from. But it's just, as long as we can hold space for those people and their families, and understand that this is a really hard time, and that we have to get through it some way or another. And I'm positive as well, and also very realistic. And I do see it working out for the better. And I do see some things falling apart to make room for better things. And that's just kind of the nature of planet Earth and for existence and humanity, is some things do fall away in order to make room. So I think we're in that stage right now.
I believe in it.
Yeah, I believe in it too. I wonder actually if YouTube is going to, because I don't know if we're allowed to, I don't know what we're allowed to talk about. I mean, we're very typical. I didn't think about that till halfway through the conversation, but I'll have to do some research. I'm glad we stayed very unbiased, though. Absolutely. We didn't talk about affirmed points or anything like that. Just kind of a general conversation, didn't we? We did, right?
I think so. I think we did a good job.
Okay, great. Excellent.
To be honest. Yeah.
I think I'm going to edit this very little, except for Peanuts barking, and away we go.
That's awesome.
Is there anything else that we wanted to cover today?
No, I think it was a great conversation. I feel like, like a therapy session after a good podcast. So that's how I'm feeling. And I just think I'm excited about part 2, because I'm going to learn from you and you're going to learn from me. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, definitely. And just to give you guys a heads up too, so part 2 is going to be on Jahneice's podcast as well. I'll have all the links in mine and on my social media. So we're going to do a little collaboration here, and we are kind of talking about the stuff that is happening to us internally in this one. And then next week or the week after, I'll keep you posted on that. We will get into our processes of how we kind of break it down and keep ourselves sane and hold space for other people and navigate through conflict a little bit more in detail. So that'll be part 2. I love it. So great. Awesome. I'm so glad I finally got to talk to you.
I know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've been messaging a lot in these over the summer, so it's been great.
Exactly.
Excellent. Good conversation, girl.
We'll talk soon, Christy.
Yes, definitely. And thanks everyone for being here. And don't forget to like and follow, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're on YouTube, please give me a like and a subscribe with a little notification, because I'm pretty new. I'm damn new to YouTube. So that would really help me out. And yeah, we're on Spotify, and I'll put Jahneice's info into the show notes as well. And she's on all the platforms too, aren't you?
Yeah, majority of them. So check us out and
reach
out. We love that. And
yeah, definitely find us on Instagram and reach out if anyone's having a struggle with this stuff. Like, this is what we're here to do, is support each other. So
exactly.
And I know Jahneice is really easy to talk to. So yeah, and so I think I am too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks everyone for joining and tuning in, and we will check you guys next week.